Philippians chapter 4. We're going to read verses 10 through 13. I rejoice greatly in the Lord that at last you renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it. I'm not saying this because I am in need, for I've learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. I know what it's like to be in need, and I know what it's like to have plenty. And I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this, all things through Christ who gives me strength. Father, we come before you today, God, and we pray that, Father, your word today will do exactly what it says it will do and not return to you void, but will accomplish all that you have purposed it. Father, calm our spirits and calm our hearts this day through your word. In the name of Jesus, we ask it. Amen. If I were to ask you, what do you want most out of this life? What would you say? If I were to ask you, what's the one thing that you want the most before you die? What is it that you would like to accomplish? What is it that motivates you, that drives you? As I look around in our country today, and probably the rest of the world, we're usually driven by one of four things, and you can pretty much categorize everything else up under one of these four things. We're either driven by popularity. Our desire is to have a lot of friends, is to be maybe famous or to be at least popular among our peers. Maybe it's to be prosperous. We're driven by the need for money, want to be wealthy, want to have security that we think is only found in money. Or maybe we want to be powerful. We want to be able to influence people and influence maybe even nations. Maybe it's just to have fun. So we're driven by fun, pleasure, just having a good time, just want to have fun. Well, the problem with all four of these things is they're ever elusive. In other words, they never really quite satisfy. As a matter of fact, you can never really quite get enough, can you? And you see that as we look around our culture today, because we see so many that are pursuing these things. You're never quite popular enough. No matter how many Facebook and Instagram posts you put up, there's always somebody who's more popular, you know? You're never quite wealthy enough. You see billionaires today still trying to get more. They want more and more. And you know, there's only so much money in the world. You do realize that, don't you? There's only so much money in the world. So for every extra dollar a billionaire gets, that's an extra dollar somebody else has to lose. You understand that? That's how economics works. So they want more, and somebody has to have less. Or maybe then they never get enough. There's never enough power, is it? Never enough power. People stepping on each other to get more power, to have more influence in our culture, but it's never enough. Or maybe it's pleasure. We've seen people seeking pleasure. Our church is full of people who are trying to recover from too much pleasure, seeking to have a good time. That's where it all started, didn't it? Just having a good time, just having fun, just kind of chilling out, numbing out. But there's never enough. Always chasing it with more and more. It's all elusive. I did. My Siri said, could you say that again? But I think I've said it too many times. But what we're really searching for is this, isn't it? Happiness. We want to be happy. And we think those things will bring that. We think, well, I'll be happy if I get enough popularity, if I'm popular enough, or if I'm prosperous enough, or if I'm powerful enough, or if I can get enough pleasure, then I'm going to be happy. And after all, we were raised that way, weren't we? We were raised to Mama saying, I just want you to be happy. It's all I care about in life is for you to be happy. Everybody wants us to be happy. And so if we're all trying to be happy, why is it that everybody's so miserable? I mean, you look around, you read Facebook, it's misery, you know? Everybody's miserable, lonely, miserable. Why are people so unsatisfied? There's something missing. There's something in this puzzle that eludes us. And the sad thing is this, that many of us who are sitting here today hearing this message will go through the rest of our life looking for it but never finding it, wanting it, desiring it with all their heart, whatever it is that's missing. Bono wrote a song back in I believe it was the 80s, one of the most popular songs. I think it hit #1 and reached the top of the charts because the words spoke to so many people. It said, in the chorus of that, or in the song, he says, I've climbed the highest mountains and I've run through the fields. I have run, I have crawled, I have scaled the city walls. I've kissed honey lips and I felt feeling in the fingertips that burn like fire, the burning desire. I've spoke with the tongues of angels and I've held the hand of the devil. It was warm in the night and I was cold as a stone. But I still haven't found what I'm looking for. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. And my generation and this generation can relate to that. Still haven't found what we're looking for. Still haven't found it. Some of us in here 60, 70 years old still haven't found what we're looking for. In our American system, we're taught that these are the things that we are to go after. These are the things that when we get them, we have arrived. And so you would think, based upon what we've been taught, that notoriety and wealth and fame would satisfy us. Marilyn Monroe was a sex symbol back in the 60s? I mean, beautiful, beautiful woman. In demand, popular, wealthy, world famous. Everybody recognized her face. I have a feeling there's probably even some youth here today. Have you ever heard of Marilyn Monroe? Wow. She's been gone a long time. Do you know that Marilyn Monroe died at the age of 36? At the height of her popularity, from an overdose, many think it was suicide, of barbiturates in 1962. Judy Garland, the little girl who was off to see the wizard in The Wizard of Oz. Great talent, great voice, great singer. My wife has actually watched a documentary on her recently. Judy Garland died at the age of 47 in 1969 from an overdose of barbiturates. Jim Morrison of the Doors, man, back in the day, that was one of the greatest rock and roll bands back in the 70s, man. Everybody loved the Doors. Jim Morrison of the Doors died at the age of 27 of a heroin overdose. Around here, we all know Elvis Presley. Age of 42. Died with at least 8 different barbiturates and narcotics in his body at the time of his death. Now, some of you may not know this name, but all you 80s folks will know this name. John Belushi. At the height of his fame, I mean, at Saturday Night Live, he was so popular. He was a household name. He'd just come out with a movie, The Blues Brothers. At the height of his fame and popularity, age of 33, died from an overdose of cocaine and heroin. Heath Ledger actually received an Oscar nomination for when he played the Joker in Batman. Heath Ledger never received that Oscar in person. He had to receive it after his death because Heath Ledger, right before the movie was released, died of a drug overdose from mixing so many different drugs inside his body. They couldn't even figure out which one actually killed him. And then there was Robin Williams. Famous, wealthy, rich, popular. died of suicide. Vincent van Gogh, suicide. Ernest Hemingway, we just came back from Key West a while back, a few months ago. Ernest Hemingway's home was there. Ernest Hemingway, one of the great authors of all time, died of suicide. I could go on and on. You can Google it. Of all the famous and the rich and the wealthy and the popular who died of suicide or drug overdoses because they still hadn't found what they were looking for. Well, Brother Wade, I've got to experience this because experience is the best teacher. Well, let me say this to you young people. Experience sometimes as a teacher charges too high tuition. It costs far too much to learn from experience. That's why the Bible gives us the answers if we'll just open the book. We don't have to go through the experience. Money, fame, power, pleasure, that's not where it is. What is it that we're really looking for? What is it? Is it happiness? I think it even goes deeper than that. You see, happiness is even fleeting, isn't it? You can have that for a moment. There's moments and times that you've been truly happy. But it leaves us. It doesn't stay. Storms occur, things happen, and all of a sudden the happiness is gone. What are you really looking for? The Bible teaches us that what you're really looking for is peace. You're looking for contentment. You see, contentment is much more than just plain happiness. Contentment is being satisfied with what's going on and where you are. That you've got enough, you know. The Bible teaches us that contentment, or Paul says it this way, that contentment is something that we learn. It's not we arrive there or just get it. In Philippians 4 verse 11, what we just read, Paul says it this way. He says, I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. So what is that secret Paul learned? Well, before I can tell you what the secret is, Paul wants to tell you what it is not. Contentment is not based upon who you are. It's not based upon that. So it's not based upon popularity. It's not based upon fame. If you'll turn back just a chapter in Philippians chapter 3, verse 4 through 6, Paul says, I've been somebody. In Philippians chapter 3, 4 through 6, it says, if someone thinks he has reasons to put confidence in the flesh, I have more. Circumcised on the eighth day of the people of Israel, tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of Hebrews, in regard to the law, a Pharisee, as for zeal, persecuting the church, as for righteousness based upon the law, faultless. Now to us that may not mean much. Like, well, so what? What's he talking about here? What he's actually talking about is, you see, back in those days, that culture was both religious and political. If you wanted to be a political leader, like if you wanted to be somebody in power, you had to be somebody in the religious establishment. Because the government was based upon a religious, political, that's how it was based. And so if I wanted to be a chief priest, I had to be religious. If I wanted to be on the ruling class or the ruling government of the Jews, I had to be on the Sanhedrin. And that's through religion. So the religion and the politics went hand in hand. And what Paul was saying is, I was moving up the ladder. I was on my way to power. I had checked all the right questions. I was on my way up. I was moving upward. And he had the best education. As a matter of fact, as you study Paul in his life, he was taught under the greatest, most famous teacher of that time, Gamaliel. He had studied. He was well educated. Not only that, but he was a Roman citizen. Now, a Roman citizen for a Jew was usually bought. It was usually paid for. So he had probably come from wealthy parents. His parents probably had a lot of money. So Paul was a man that not only had a lot of money, probably from a wealthy family, he had the best education, and now he was moving up the political ladder because Paul wanted to be somebody. And there's some of us youth in here, maybe some old, we want to be somebody one day. We want to be recognized one day. And so that's what Paul was driving Paul. That was his motivation. But something happened one day on a road to Damascus. And there Paul met Jesus. And so Paul goes on in Philippians 3, verse 7 and 8, and he says it this way, but whatever were gains to me, I now consider loss for the sake of Christ. What is more, I consider everything a loss because surpassing worth of knowing Christ Jesus as my Lord, for whose sake I have lost all things, and I consider them garbage that I may gain Christ. Now, some of us don't have any idea what that means, but here's what it means. When I found Jesus, everything else I lost, and I don't care. He says, I counted everything. I wanted to be somebody, but when I met Jesus, I realized I was nobody, and he was somebody, and so I put myself in the back seat, and I put him in the driver's seat, and I count everything else that I was trying to go for, all these other things that I was trying to achieve, they are nothing more than garbage, is what he says. But the actual word there, the Bible is being nice here. The actual word is dung or manure, or for some of you Southern folks, you know exactly what it is. He says, I count them all that. That's what they are. They're nothing. You see, our perspective is all wrong. We need to tilt our head in another direction. Instead of feeling cursed for all the things that's gone wrong, for all the things we haven't achieved, maybe we ought to tilt our head another direction and understand that there's a lot of things that's went right. And maybe we ought to feel blessed for the things that went right instead of all the things that went wrong. See, it's a matter of perspective. It's how we look at life, isn't it? You can either do one of two things. You can count your cursings or you can count your blessings, but I will guarantee you, you will have both. You're going to have both. And whatever perspective you choose to live in will dictate how you live your life. You can live, woe is me, and being a victim the rest of your life, or you can look up and see that God wants more for you than that. God wants you to have life abundant, full, and free. The Bible describes it as overflowing life. But if you want to live in the trash heap, then you go ahead and be the victim and play the victim, because you can play that the rest of your life until you die, and your life will be worthless in a sense of what you could have been. You know, we've been talking on Wednesday nights about the judgment seat of Christ. And we talk about how the movie's going to be played or whatever. But you know what I think one of the great reasons that there will be tears in heaven is not because of our sin being exposed, but because of the regrets of what we did not do with the life that we were given. The regret. Man, if only now. If only I had done. If only I had said. If only I had went. See, Paul understood when a man has Jesus, he actually has everything. And I'm saying this straightforwardly. The most important thing in Mr. Spanky's life, who just recently passed, and Daniel's life now hanging in the balance, is Jesus and what they did with him. That's it, man. You see, when I talk about having Jesus, I'm not talking about religion. I'm not talking about you coming to church. I'm not talking about you paying a little money. I'm not talking about you reading the Bible or praying. I'm talking about a relationship with him where you walk and talk with him every day. When you have that kind of relationship with Jesus where he's constantly like one thought away and you're walking with him and you're talking with him, when you have that, you're beginning to have that contentment and that peace flow into your life. A man once told me, and I understand why he said it, he said if a man has his health, he has everything. And that's partially true. But I've seen people who have their health ruin it. And I've seen people in bad health and facing death find contentment and courage to face uncertain days. You see, contentment is it's not based upon what you are or who you are. It's also not based upon what you have. Look what Philippians chapter 4 verse 12 says. It says, I know what it's like to be in need, and I know what it's like to have plenty. On down it says, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or living in want. You see, it's not based upon material things. I used to think it was when I was a kid. Man, if I only had this, if I only had that. First car I ever had was a Ranchero. Anybody ever heard of a Ranchero? Trust me, nobody probably heard of them because they quickly quit making them. But a Ranchero was kind of like a truck. It was a half breed between a car and a truck. You know, that was the first car I had. Man, it was green, and it was green and Bondo. That's the truth. It was green and Bondo, and I was constantly having my daddy and I out there trying to work on the engine or the transmission. The thing it was pitiful. And but I loved that Ranchero because at least it got me from point A to point B. But man, I thought one of these days I'm gonna have me a good car. One of these days I'm gonna have a decent ride, man. I can't stand this. So I upgraded when I went to college and I got a Pinto. A Pinto was a fire trap, man. They had kind of you could got those things for. I think I bought mine for $300 or $400 because back then it was like a fire trap. If somebody ran into the back of you, you just exploded. So whenever I was at a stop sign, I see somebody coming up quick, I just ran through the stop sign because I didn't want them to hit me. You know, it was kind of like a death trap. So if you know what the Pinto, Google it. It's true. So I mean, the Pinto was. So I drove the Pinto all the way through college. I can't even fathom that now. It didn't have air conditioning. Man, I don't even know if I could buy a car anymore without air conditioning. Air conditioning didn't have no air conditioning even on it. So you just roll down the windows, and I thought, man, one of these days I'm gonna have me a decent car. One of these days I'm gonna have a decent car. Man, that old Pinto, I mean, I tried to fix it up. I painted it. I put some rims on it because that's what everybody did back in the 80s, you know, put rims on everything. And so I put me some new chrome rims on it, and I painted the thing in my shed, and I drove that thing, and I thought, man, one of these days I'm gonna get me a real car, and I'm gonna ride, you know. And when I get that, I'm gonna be happy because I wasn't ever happy really with that Ranchero, and I wasn't really happy with that Pinto. But when I get me a real car, one of these days I'm gonna get it. So I graduated college, and I got me a job, and I went out and I bought me a 1984 T-top Firebird, and I thought, man, now I got it. I'm going to be happy now. Man, I got that Firebird home, and I washed that thing down. I washed it every day. Man, if it had a speck of dust on that thing, I washed that Firebird, cleaned that thing up. You know, I think they had Armor All back then. If they did, I Armor All the snot out of it. So I kept that thing spotless, you know, for about a month. And then that thing got just as dirty as that Pinto and just as dirty as everything else. Because you know what? Newness wears off, doesn't it? It does. Because you know what? It didn't really satisfy. I thought it would. Some of you are like that. You know, you thought it would. You thought when you got that woman, you'd be happy. You thought when you got that man, you'd be happy now. Woo. You thought when you got that house, then you would be happy. Didn't work out though, did it? You thought when you got that car, when you got that job, when you got on with your career, then you would be happy. If only then. Then when you get these things, you're going to be happy. Look, you don't even have to be wealthy to know that materialistic things do not satisfy. They don't. And Paul was saying that. I've learned that secret. It was taught to me. It's not based upon materialistic things. Contentment is also not based upon circumstances, situations, where you are, or future dates. Notice what Paul says in Philippians 4, verse 12. And I'm going to kind of read the middle of it. He says, I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. Underline that. In any and every situation. It's not based upon where I am, who I'm with, what's going on. It's not based upon that. I remember my cousin and I, we were sitting out back of my aunt's house one night. I was 12 years old. I remember this. I was 12 years old, and we were sitting out there, and we were just talking. Because you know what? There's nothing better in life when you're 12 years old than being with your cousin. Is that true? Everybody likes their cousins, man. You love your cousin. So I was out there with my cousin, and we was out there talking, and I said, man, I cannot wait till I'm 13. Man, when I'm 13, I won't have to go to bed at 9 o'clock. When I'm a teenager, I'm going to be a teenager, and I can't wait till I'm 13. So I'm a teenager. Man, I turned 13. And I said, you know what? I can't wait till I'm 16. Man, when I'm 16, I'll be able to get my driver's license. And the day I turn 16, I got that joker. Man, I can't wait till I'm 16. Man, I turned 16. I was like, man, I can't wait until I turn 18. When I'm 18, I'll be an adult. I can get away from mom and daddy, don't have to listen to them anymore. I can do whatever I want to do. I can stay out as late as I want to. Man, when I turn 18, I'll be happy. So, man, I turned 18, and I said, I can't wait till I'm 21. Man, when I'm 21, I'll graduate college. When I'm 21, I'll be considered an adult. I can vote. I can do whatever I want to do. Can't nobody tell me what to do. When I'm 21, I'll have a little money in my pocket. I'll have a job. When I'm 21, I will have arrived, and I'll be happy. I turned 21. I said, I can't wait till I'm 25. Man, by the time I'm 25, I will be married. By the time I'm 25, I'll have me a job. I'll have me a little money. I'll have me a house. When I'm 25, then I'll be happy. I got 25, so I can't wait till I'm 30. I'm tired of these little kids around. Babies pooping all over the place, crying, throwing up on me. I can't wait until they grow up a little bit. I can't wait until I'm 30. I turned 30, and I was like, man, I can't wait until I'm 40. This is true. I can't wait till I'm 40 because then I will be established in my career. I will be an adult. I will be a mature man. I will have everything I want and everything I need. I'll be secure. I can't wait till I'm 40. I turned 40 and I said, I wish I was 12. When are you going to arrive? When are you going to get there? When are you going to find it? What you're looking for? You see, contentment is not based upon where you are, who you're with, some future date. There's a story of a man and his son. They worked in a family grocery store in a very, very small town. Son hated it there. Man, he wanted some excitement in his life. He couldn't stand it anymore. He finally went to his daddy. He said, Daddy, I can't live here anymore. I can't stand it. I can't stand this little hick town. I got to get out of this town. I got to get to the city where the women are sexy and the lights are always on and the music's always playing. I'm tired of this boring and dull hick life. And Daddy says, no, son, just hold on. And the son looked at him and said, Daddy, you can't stop me. I've made up my mind. I'm leaving this town. He says, son, I'm not trying to stop you. Just hold on. Let me pack so I can go with you. We're always looking for something more. But the secret of being content, Paul says, is this in Philippians 4, verse 13, thus wearing the shirt. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Now that verse right there, what does that mean? Well, first of all, here's what I know it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean that I can hit this stage and not hit the ground, because it doesn't mean that because I believe in Jesus, I can defy the laws of gravity or nature. So what does it mean? It doesn't mean either that anything I put my mind to, I can do. It's not what it means either. You see, the best translation of this verse is this, is I am self-sufficient in Christ's sufficiency. In other words, I am ready for anything and equal to anything through him who infuses me with inner strength. That's how the amplified version of the Bible reads it. In other words, here's what it means. I am content with the fact that God is in control. That's what it means. I have released myself to the fact that it's God. He's got it. I can't do anything about it anyway. And he's the writer of history. And he's the author of my life. And it's understanding that and receiving that gives us a inner spiritual strength. Because you can have all the the physical strength in the world and still be a heathen and die of a heart attack at the age of 33. Because physical strength will only get you so far. Spiritual strength can help you endure crisis that will drive 300-pound bench pressers to their knees. Spiritual strength get you through any and every situation because you understand that God's got this. And I've given it to him. It's all a matter, Ainsley, of who is in control. You see, as long as you want to control your destiny, you're never going to be happy. Young people, you better listen to me. As long as you want to control your destiny, you're never going to be happy. As long as you want to control who you date, when you're going to have sex, who you're going to marry, how much money you're going to make, what job you're going to take, you're never going to be happy. You're never going to arrive. It's the moment that you release it to God and say, God, you send me who you want me to be with. God, you share with me where you want me to work. God, I'm willing to go wherever you want me to go. God, I'm willing to do whatever you want me to do because, God, I'm in the back seat and you're in the driver's seat. It is that daily surrendering of yourself to that Paul says, God infuses me with inward strength. You know where he was when he wrote this? He was in prison about to be executed. He wasn't going through a good time right now. He wasn't having a lot of fun. He was facing beheading, which he eventually got. This may have been one of the last letters he actually wrote. And here throughout the book of Philippians, and a lot of times new Christians come to me, or especially people in recovery, and I'll give them a Bible or I'll tell them they need to get in the Word of God, and I'll direct them to the very first book I want you to read is the book of Philippians. Why? Because throughout there is a resounding theme, rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice, rejoice, rejoice. It's all throughout the book. And then he talks about this. I can do all things. Contentment. And see, joy and contentment are intertwined, Cheryl. You can't really have one without the other. You can't have joy, real joy, without contentment, and you can't have contentment without real joy. They go hand in hand. They walk together. And so today, if you want joy, if you want contentment, it's releasing control to God. You see, God, it's God that gives us purpose. It's God that's writing the story of your life, and it's God that has the final say about you. And Jesus is called the Prince of Peace, and only God can give you peace. You see, the world can counterfeit a lot of things, but the world cannot counterfeit real peace, real serenity. Horatio Spafford lived in Chicago in the 1870s. I think Brother Gene may remember him. Not playing. No, Brother Gene's not quite that old yet. He lived in the Chicago in the 1870s. Their 4-year-old son, Horatio Jr., died suddenly of scarlet fever. Then only a year later, the Chicago fire broke out in 1871, and it swept through downtown Chicago. It devastated the city, including many properties that was owned by Horatio Spafford. 2 years later, in 1873, Spafford decided he and his family would take a much-needed holiday in England. He was actually friends with a famous evangelist preacher, D.L. Moody. And so they were going over to hear D.L. Moody preach, and he would be speaking in the autumn, and so they were going that way. Thinking the vacation would be a good time for the family, and he sent his wife and his daughters on ahead because he had some unfinished work he had to do at home. So his wife and his daughters board the ship and they began to sail to England. But a tragedy occurred. They hit another ocean liner on the way and the ship sunk. Nearly 300 people lost their lives in that wreck. All of Horatio Spafford's daughters were dead. His wife somehow survived the tragedy. And so she was taken to a hospital in England. Back in those days, you didn't have a cell phone, so she sent Mr. Spafford a telegram that read this: "Saved alone. What shall I do?" Horatio immediately set out for England. At one point on the voyage, he asked the captain of the ship, would he point out where the tragedy occurred in the water. And so the captain summoned Horatio to tell him they were now passing over the spot where the shipwreck had occurred and where his daughters had lost his life, all four of them. It was there, as they were in that spot, that Spafford wrote down a hymn, a song that is sung by many even today. When peace like a river attendeth my way, and sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. Where do you find that kind of contentment? Only in Jesus. Will you stand with me?